Greetings to all my brothers and sisters in the Jamaat al-Muslimin. Great pleasure again. My heart is never very far from the Muslimin. When I saw the theme of the meeting this evening, it was no surprise, but what was the lesson was the coincidence in my train of thought and the theme of the meeting. Because I was thinking about the Jamaat al-Muslimin and its legacy in the context of the history of Islam in the West. And putting all of that in perspective with reference to the task and duty of Muslims in the West. And when I say Muslims in the West, I mean Muslims born, raised, socialized, educated in the West. All of us who have this very intimate knowledge and experience of what it is to be a Muslim in the West. And all the contradictions between the teachings of the Quran, how we are supposed to journey through the dunya, the present life, until the day of judgment.
Yes.
And what it is.
People will send to the forest to catch Queen Obiageri, and each Obiageri will get to the forest.
And what it is, how being placed in the West affects us on our journey through the dunya, and especially the need for dawah in the West. So that is what I would like to look at, because it is the most important issue. So I would commence by looking at the contradiction between Quranic discourse and the discourse of the West. In order for us as Muslims to understand the specific reality of our journey through the dunya in the West, and how we devise a strategy of this journey. The Quran teaches that we embrace Islam by first accepting the reality that Islam is premised on the position that we are solely the property of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no compromise, there is no sharing, there is no way in which you feel that you can dance with the West and play at being Muslim, and on the day of judgment you qualify for the bliss. It is very clear. Because qualifying for the bliss is not a gift. We have to work to earn it in the dunya. And the Quran spells out the entire method that we must adopt in our daily lives in order to earn this bliss. The Quran also teaches that if we follow the methodology of the Quran, whilst we are in the dunya, we can also earn the outpouring of the Sakina, And this entire journey is premised upon the reality that we are the slave of Almighty Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. There is no compromise. And that is why in the Quran, we have this extensive body of ayats devoted to teaching us what is the nature of the munafiqun, the hypocrites of Islam, relentlessly warning us that there is no reward for the condition of being a hypocrite. And the Quran teaches that the munafiqun is our most intractable enemy because they are the tip of the spear of the kafirun within the heart of Islam. And we must always be cognizant of that reality. So now, that is the position of the Quran. We must now understand what is the strategy and the discourse of the West and how it impacts Muslims and Islam, and especially Muslims and Islam in the West. What we must understand is that the Massa our ancestors encountered in the years of colonial domination before the late 18th and early 19th century is not the same white supremacist Massa that we are faced with today. Massa has evolved over time, changing his strategies for his assault on Islam. So it has evolved, and we have to come to grips with the reality of the 21st century versus the reality of the 15th and the 16th and the 17th centuries. Not the same enemy that we are faced with, but there are fundamental continuities with their position. The first continuity is white supremacy. White supremacy was created in the period before they were industrial nations, and it is based upon white Christianity. It's a Christian concept where the white race is endowed by God, and since the white race is so endowed, the white male has all right to all of God's creation. They call it manifest destiny. And that is what drove their conquest. With the coming of the Industrial Revolution, they attained technological superiority over us with the power of the gun. So therefore, they invented their scientific revolution, and they created their concept of atheist science, a science that is secular, atheist, racist, and the most insidious aspect of it, it worships the white male as the quintessential expression of all that is powerful and perfect. So you do not need to worship God. You do not need to be in subservience to God. You worship man. And in so doing, that has evolved. from the late 18th century, early 19th century, the late 18th and early 20th century, so late 19th and early 20th century, sorry, to the 21st century, where they have now created a new human. This human is now a desiring machine. Man must be driven by human desire. And you attain power over this human by relentlessly stimulating that human to pursue desire, depravity, greed. So this desiring machine is what you exert power over by dint of its subservience to desire. Now, my sisters and brothers, it is clearly apparent that we have reached a stage where in the West we are faced with the most intractable assault upon Islam since 1492. The continuity in the two periods is the morbid fear and hatred for Islam. It is this morbid fear and hatred of Islam that drove the Crusades, that drove the formation of the Order of the Knights Templars in the 11th century. And in this morbid fear and hatred of Islam, you had the additional provision 15 of a morbid fear for the African. Remember the invasion of Europe under the Roman Empire by Hannibal and his forces. Most of all, remember the invasion of Europe and the conquest of Europe by the Moors. Columbus only ventured across the Atlantic after the Moors descended upon each other in fratricidal bickering and war, destroyed the empire, and they were able to then liberate themselves from Moorish rule. So the entire design to send Columbus across the Atlantic was to know, with the Moors, the back of the Moorish Empire broken, to now reach out to the world and begin the conquest of the world, and to create it in their own image and likeness. And remember, the fundamental basis of white supremacist doctrine is the Christian cross. It is always displayed on all their regalia, from the days of Columbus to the neo-Nazis of Ukraine today. Christianity, the KKK, Christianity is a fundamental aspect of white supremacy, and it works for white supremacy. So there is then a political reason for us to be converted to Christianity, and for Christianity to maintain a hold on us. So even during their scientific revolution, and that they insisted that God is dead, the Christian outreach continues. Because what the Christians and the atheists have in common is white supremacy. That is what binds them together. So we came to the West by various means of colonial domination. and for various reasons arising from colonial domination. So what happened is that in the process of conquest, you have to relentlessly formulate and unleash a series of lies that you have to convince the conquered to accept, to believe, and to act upon in order for you to conquer them and keep them servile at the level of the idea. And that is where the process of insisting to us that we are inferior and we are inferior beings, and therefore we are always in need to be led by them, arose. So from 1492 to 2024, the battle to conquer us at the level of the idea continues. In 2092, the empire will be 600 years in duration. But what is clearly apparent if you follow the strategy of Almighty Allah revealed in geopolitics of the world on a daily basis, you will see that by 2035, this order of power is finished, because the rise of China is finishing it, it's putting an end to it. And the only way that they can stop this is to literally destroy China with nuclear war. So that is the great crisis that they now face. This is our opportunity now as Muslims to exploit with our dawah, because they are now a conquered massa who is in need of an alternate worldview to get them out of the morass that they are in. Because how can you retain dominance of the world when you destroy the world in order to conquer it and keep exercising power over it? And as we know, Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never allow any human to destroy his creation, because it is his alone. So this is the conjuncture, this is the opportunity that we are now being presented, and this is the challenge, this is the test. This is the test from the all-knowing, the omnipotent. Are we now in a position to exploit this opportunity being presented to us? What has happened to us is that you see Muslims from the Muslim lands migrating to the United States of America, the North Atlantic, and being trapped in a ghetto, a mental ghetto. And the reason why they are trapped in this mental ghetto is that they are not of the West, like us, to understand what they are doing, what is their strategy to assault us, and how to mitigate it. The next problem we have is that they have exercised power for so long over the Muslim lands that they have placed into power, and they continue to prop up a series of regimes of the Munafiqun who are trying their endeavor best to hold on to power and their wealth amassed by blatant thievery and oppression, propping up massa for their own good. And it is now a heart-rendering daily experience for me to watch what is going on in Gaza. The slaughter, as the rest of them sit down on their hands and aid and abet Massa using the tip of the Zionist tip of his spear into the heart of Islam. And we sit every day and the people are being slaughtered and we do nothing. That is the great shame. For you have literally, you profess to be Muslim, but you have turned your back on all the teachings of the Quran as to what is obligatory for a Muslim in the dunya to do. And you actually look at the example of the House of Sword as they are scrambling now to save themselves by hoping now to make friends with China so they can ride the new train that is coming. Whilst they still continue to dance with Massa. So it is a conviction against all of us. So what is happening? We are now faced with a choice. Do we choose desire? Do we choose life? Do we choose what we feel is safe for us versus our duty to speak truth to power? And what happens to us who refuse to do our duty when we stand before the judgment seat, which is a given? You cannot be a Muslim and don't believe that that is a given. It is inevitable and it will happen. Because the time will come when each and every one of us will have to answer. Will have to answer for our deeds. So this choice that has to be made goes to the very heart of what a Muslim is, what a slave of Almighty Allah is, what the property of Almighty Allah is, what a member of the cult of Almighty Allah is, because that is what we're supposed to be. So the fact of the matter is, Islam in the entire world is at a crossroads. But we in the West is at an even more dangerous crossroad than the rest of Islam. Because we have the burden to bear, because we are the ones of the West who is supposed to know of the West and how to deal with the West and how to reach and how to do the dawah to the West that is relevant to the West. So that is the fundamental reality today. So we always have choices, and human beings work out all forms of compromises at the level of their mind as to how they're going to undertake this journey. Those who feel that you can dance the dance of Massa and dance the dance of Almighty Allah, fact, hedge all your bets. And then one day you reach to the day of judgment and you will get through on that day. I have news for you, my brothers and sisters. It don't work so, because if you feel you could con Almighty Allah, you're delusional. You're delusional. Because even before you make the move, the omnipotent, all-knowing knows what you're going to do. And he have the means to mitigate what you're going to do already. Because that is what it means to be omnipotent. To understand the game you're playing. The game you're playing in the dunya is a deadly game, because the dunya is the test. All our ancestors who preceded us in the West took the test. And let me state this reality. In the history of the West and Islam, every single Muslim leader who chose to resist rather than submit, they strove their endeavor best to kill that leader, to wipe out that organization. That is the threat we pose. Bookman in Haiti, the very people that Bookman joined up with to start the Haitian Revolution sold Bookman down the river to Massa, because they took the decision that they will now join forces with the Spanish against the French. Bookman told them, why must I fight for the oppressor who has slaves next door to me, expecting that the oppressor will free me after I defeat the French? They answered Bookman by hanging him. Daddy Sharp in Jamaica, with the 1832 Christmas Rebellion, in the most barbarous manner, they hung Daddy Sharp and left his body on a pole, immolated, with his head off to rot, so that everybody could pass and watch him and say, that is what I do. That is what I do to those who resist. So don't you think that it was on the cards to get rid of the Jamaat al-Muslimin? When the Jamaat al-Muslimin unleashed in Trinidad and Tobago in the run-up to 1990, the most potent dawah that has ever been unleashed in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean, and possibly in the Western Hemisphere, since Islam came to the West. Wouldn't they want that organization to stumble and crumble and fall? So as long as you stand for what we believe in, what we have written on our minds and our hearts, there is a price that we will pay. Because you don't pelt stone at green mango. So never forget that. Never forget that. The Jamaat al-Muslimin, with its coalition of the various Jama on the swampland, unleashed on Trinidad and Tobago, the most potent dawah ever unleashed. Because the Muslims of the Indian indentiures was not interested in dawah. They were interested in maintaining a race, religious identity. And Massa did everything for them to ensure that they merge Islam with a race identity. Massa allowed their missionaries to come to them. Did Massa allow any missionaries to come to us when we were enslaved and when we were colonized? We were under the colonial yoke, and they were allowing their missionaries to come to them on the proviso that they will only visit them and not come to us. Tell me if I'm lying, you know? And they came, they visited them, left, went back. It took the Jamaat al-Muslimin to formulate and unleash this dawah that impacted Trinidad and Tobago. So in the aftermath of 1970 and the Black Power Revolution, the Jamaat al-Muslimin continued. This time it was Islamic dawah. We present to you the solution to your problems in the society is Islam. No retreat, no surrender. I will never forget the day in which the Jamaat al-Muslimin lined up on the pavement and the road outside the Colonial Oval when Kerry Packer and his crew was playing the so-called circus cricket inside, which was a white movement to break the back of the boycott against racist apartheid South Africa. And the Jamaat al-Muslimin came out and stood firm and said, no, no more. And the potency of that dawah. And so it was up and down throughout Trinidad and Tobago. My brothers and sisters, I attended UWI with Abdul Karim, 75 to 78. When I discovered that the gentleman I associated with at UWI was now Abdul Karim and a member of the Jamaat al-Muslimin and ended up being killed, that rocked my world to see the transition Abdul Karim made in his life. Because the Abdul Karim was entirely different from the person I knew in UWI. A dramatic change that showed the power of Islam and the power of the Jamaat al-Muslimin and its dawah. And then the news came that they killed Karim. That rocked my world. That is the dawah that Trinidad and Tobago needs today. The Caribbean needs today. The Western world needs today. A dawah that invites people to change their life fundamentally, because the world is in crisis. The world is looking down the barrel of a gun with a crazed race who is not willing to accept the fact that their time is over and move on, and is willing to destroy any and everything in order to maintain their dominance. Their economy is shattered. And their solution to every problem they face, they have is war and more war. Whilst we insist that the solution is Islam and peace. So this is the reality, and this is the challenge we all face as Muslims. So we continue to have all the problems we face in Islam and Sri Lanka and Tobago. We continue to be racially divided. We continue with the bickering and the backbiting. Throughout history, Muslims have a propensity for division, backbiting, and consuming each other to the benefit of massa. Because when we backbite and we fight and we tear down each other, it does not benefit us. It benefits our intractable enemy, who is unrelenting in his assault. Why do you think they created Israel? Israel now is the advanced guard to literally unleash Holocaust on us. So they have now started on Lebanon. And they have impunity because we continue to fail to understand there is one rule for us and none for them. They have impunity. So when you look at them and the Olympics, that's a big joke because the rules for us, there's none for them. And they always invoke rules to keep us down, and there's none for them. So it has been revealed that the entire US team to the Olympics has a drugging problem. It's only doping. But nobody is going to get found guilty of doping, but they'll hold on to athletes from a poor nation and tell them that you can't go there. Or we found dope in your blood. It is pure, utter. It is worse than hypocrisy. What then? Where are our voices raised against this? Where are we speaking truth to power? Are we afraid to even speak truth to power? Or we have settled for desire and we are just simply walking around masking ourselves with an Islamic facade? But what we are really is desiring machines in the mold of massa and only pursuing all that we desire in the here and now under the facade of being, and what I love to see it. The ones who are pursuing desire in the here and now always project themselves as being super Muslims. So we have grave problems to deal with now. It is time to deal with it. Because if we fail to deal with it, the fact of the matter is, each and every one of us will answer for it. If I could give you all, share with you all, sorry, a piece of my life and my journey to Islam that the Jamaat al-Muslimin was so pivotal in. I was raised a Roman Catholic. When I was 16 years old, I became a born-again Christian. And I studied, whilst being a born-again Christian, I studied my way to the level of evangelist, preacher, preaching in crusade, radio, TV, marrying people. The only thing I never did was a funeral. And I sat down and I devoted myself to studying the Torah and the New Testament. In the New Testament, I reached the level of studying the Koine Greek that the New Testament was written in. And I reached the stage in my life where by doing all that study, I uncovered all the inconsistencies of the New Testament. All. And I said to myself, Christianity was the creation of Paul. Whilst being a Christian minister, I started to read the Quran. The first translation of the Quran I read was an Ahmadiyya translation. I was not a Muslim. I was a Christian minister. But yet, after reading that translation of the Quran, I fully understood that the Ahmadiyya was shirk. And I wasn't even a Muslim. So I walked away from Christianity, but refused to be an atheist because I consider atheism to be lunacy. Because an atheist worships man in all his weakness. And that is when I began the process of becoming what I called a proto-Muslim. No pork, no alcohol, no fornication. You are abiding by the teachings of the Quran. You accept Almighty Allah as your boss. But you have not yet made the decision to go public and tell people, I am a Muslim. Proud of it. You know what brought me out of the woodwork? To stand up now and proclaim that I am Muslim. July 27, 1990. Because that was the message to me. Time to stop faking it and get real. My entire course of writing, studying, talking, preaching as a Muslim is based upon the dawah of the Jamaat al-Muslimin in the 1980s. I experienced that dawah. I read that dawah to understand it fully. So when I started my journey, it is the dawah of the Jamaat al-Muslimin of the 1980s that directed my research and writing and all what I speak. That is the power of that dawah to change lives. So the Jamaat al-Muslimin has a powerful legacy that it has to reclaim. Because that is the message I really want to bring today. The Jamaat al-Muslimin has a powerful legacy. It has to reclaim. It has to go back to. It has to be critical. Bring it up to par for 2024 onwards. And reclaim its legacy. Relaunch the dawah. Let all of us join together now into one coalition to now make a difference in this Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean, and the West. The foundation was laid. It is time now to reclaim it and breathe new life into it. That is our duty. So that is the reality. That is the impact. That is the impact the Jamaat al-Muslimin had on me and my journey to Islam. And that is why the Jamaat al-Muslimin may not see me, but I'm always there. Always there. Always asking questions and finding out what is going on. Because the Jamaat al-Muslimin is close to my heart. So the reality is, I am old and I am weary. It is time for me to hand over to young people and for me to prepare myself in the final stages for my journey to the next stage of existence, waiting for the judgment seat. I am old, weary, sick, and I've paid a grave price for my dawah. But I accept that because I am working to earn the bliss, nothing else. Because by being the property of Almighty Allah, Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, I have found definition, order, meaning, purpose to my life in the dunya. If I did not have this discipline, I would have been dead already. Because I would have kept myself in some untoward, illegal activity, and I would have been dead long time. Because I came out of 1969-70 questioning everything and looking for change. Islam answered my question. Islam gave me purpose. And now I'm just holding on in my final years. So I put this challenge. So the question is, how do we prepare ourselves in the dunya for the job we must do? And the only way we can prepare ourselves in the dunya for the job we must do is by purging our ideas, our action of all traces of the impact of the lies of massa and how it has conditioned the way in which we view the world and act. We have to purge ourselves, purge our mind, purge the way we view the world, and replace it with Quranic discourse. Cleanse ourselves, and then undertake purposefully action demanded of us. And remember, Almighty Allah does not place any burden on an individual that that individual cannot cope with. So each and every one of us, remember, the dawah is our duty, but only Almighty Allah, Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, has the power to effect the increase. Never forget that. Never forget that. That is his power alone. So We therefore need to delve into the mechanism by which we are controlled, the mechanism by which we compromise, the mechanism by which we turn our gaze away from. The worst we can ever do is to feel that we can possibly possess. So, they insist to you that desire is healthy, desire is natural. But there is a difference between desire and instinct. The instinct is what we have been created with. Desire is man-made. So that is why you have something called advertisement. Because if desire was instinctual, you will need advertisement to generate desire. Because we must constantly pursue what they insist to us is fad. Sculpt our bodies in keeping with what they say. Desire possessions in keeping with what they say is trendy and fashionable and desirable. Bear hate and malice because it is trendy and fashionable. Racism. And you can go on and on. That is the task we face. That is the task we need now to dismantle the whole body of lies, understand it, and then mitigate it. The most intractable problem we face amongst Muslims in Trinidad and Tobago today is that the race hate in the Muslim community has now directly fed us to embrace the race hate of Kafiron politics. Kafiron politics enhances the race hate that divides us. Both of them flow together because Kafiron politics in Trinidad and Tobago is the politics of race hate. And when we say we are Muslims and we partake in this race hate politics, what is the example we are given for our dawah? When we are Muslims and we put politics before our duty, when we are Muslims and we put politics before the very teachings of the Quran, are we then Muslims? In Trinidad and Tobago, you have, within the Muslim community today, you have Muslims who actually put politics before abiding trust in Almighty Allah. So you believe that politics, Kafiron politics, is the path for you to get all the possessions you desire, which shows that you have no faith, no trust, no submission to the will of Almighty Allah. Because Allah will not deliver to you what you desire. So you embrace Kafiron politics of race hate for you to get what you desire. Isn't that rebellion? Does rebellion get us into the bliss? Or does it put us in the burning pit that lasts forever? You know why the burning pit lasts forever? Because on the day of judgment is the end of all time. So thereafter, from the day of judgment, there is no time. So the bliss is forever and ever and ever. And the pit is forever and ever and ever. So you go to the point where you are willing to watch Allah in his face and tell him, partner, you really ain't delivering what I want. So I'm going to deal with man. So I could get what I want right now. And then hopefully I could do a little hustle thing and get you when you come and you fold up the universe and say, done. Hopefully I could get you. I will try something. Delusion. So the race division, and the race division is so acute. So acute. I will never forget the day when I was doing my research on the entire run-up to July 27, 1990, when I read the affidavit from the Port submitted by the Port of Spain City Corporation to the High Court to throw the Muslimin off the piece of swampland, where they submitted an affidavit by an imam who wrote and insisted that the Jamaat al-Muslimin were not Muslims. They were something called black Muslims. I don't know what is that. When I read that affidavit, my blood ran cold. To the depth of depravity you will go in your race hate, because you have embraced the politics of race hate. So actually, for shame on Islam, by signing such a document to empower the Kafirun to scatter your Muslim brothers and sisters from a piece of swampland that they literally took and turned into what it is today by sweat and blood. And I'm sorry, but I will not apologize for getting emotional, because we must get emotional. That is grave injustice. That is the extent to which it is reaching this country, where you will go to the Kafirun and insist to the Kafirun, get the people off the land. They are not Muslims, they are fakers. They have no idea. And you are willing to precipitate any action by any means necessary. And you could only say to yourself that the fundamental reason for this action is race hate. That is the extent to which you have surrendered to masses' desire. That is the extent to which you are willing to go to dance with massa, to satisfy your desire. Then you will believe you ain't a slave of Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You ain't write the Quran on your mind and heart. And the bacchanal continues. It is never ending and unceasing, because we have surrendered to massa desire, refusing to accept the fact that massa has no love nor respect for Islam. Massa has relentlessly tried to destroy Islam from the Crusades to today. The Crusades never ended. And those of us who are living in the belly of the West must understand. So that is why when you come up with a grand idea that after you have served Massa, you are going to attack Massa's home world. That is the greatest gift you gave Massa. That is the greatest gift you gave Massa. Since you surrendered to his desire. Because he used that attack to justify turning his home world into an open-air prison camp for all Muslims. So by attacking Massa home world after you have been Massa's strike force in the Muslim world for years, you did everything in your power to destroy the Dawah in the West. That is your great contribution. So that is how far we have gone in seeking to sidetrack, to overturn, to destroy Almighty Allah's agenda for the world. And I laugh at them. Where are they today? They are slaughtering our brothers and sisters in Gaza. Where are they? But Allah is there. And his will is being revealed in the world daily. But man will always try, because man always seeks to have his own way. That is the example for us with the shaitan, rebellion. So the question arises, every single Muslim on a daily basis, an hourly basis, a by-minute basis, have to relentlessly question ourselves. What is your motivation, partner? What you're in this for? You're committed? You're subservient? You're servile? You're one? Or you're just playing game? Because this is not a game. This is not a game. This play is hardball cricket. With man coming down at you 100 miles an hour and more. The fact of the matter is, as I look to fold up now, my brothers, and sisters, sorry about that. Let me repeat, the conjuncture is upon the Muslim world. But it is even stronger for us in the West. As Massa trashes about, fighting his endeavor best to stop the collapse of his domination of the world. We in the West have an opportunity to make the difference. Remember, we raise our voices, there's a price to pay. But if we don't raise our voices, isn't there also a price to pay? But we have to understand that is the choice we made when we said we are Muslim. In Islam, there is no retreat, no surrender, you know. When I was a Christian minister, I used to get up on the podium and preach this insidious Christian doctrine that you sin and you go to Jesus in prayer for forgiveness, and the blood of Jesus will wash you clean and you go back again. It's not that in Islam, you know. The Quran don't teach that, you know. That you go and you do, and you say, oh, I'm so sorry, and forgive me, and then you go back and you do it again. Quran teaches that as long as you have knowledge that what you are doing is wrong, there's no forgiveness for that. Because you have the knowledge teaching you that it is wrong. An action that is contrary to the knowledge that you have is abomination. It's rebellion, because this is rebellion. The fact of the matter is, the time has now come in the history of the world where we, the Muslims of the West, can no longer stay quiet, can no longer feel that we could get by playing this dance with massa and dance the next side and come back at game. And we can no longer feel we could straddle both worlds and enjoy both worlds. We have to make the only choice we have, and that is the choice Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set for us. And that is why I appeal to each and every one of us. Let us go back to the dawah of the Jamaat al-Muslimin of the 1980s, review, reformulate, and come back. Let us now bring new dawah, return the dawah, that potent dawah, to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean, and the West. And the Jamaat al-Muslimin, in doing that, is going to once again embrace its destiny. Because in the past, it has the track record of impacting and changing people's life for the better. Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum, Brother Darius.
Yes, my brother. Alaikum salam.
Yeah, this is your brother here, man.
Yes, sir.
You know who you're talking to?
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Well, Brother Darius, he was like a shower on my back after I come out from playing a hot football game in the dust. You understand the analogy?
Thank you.
You like the analogy? I'll feel a hard football match in the dusty play field. And I want to just go in and take a shower, a fresh. So it was like that. It was like that shower in my back there just now. The reality is that, you know, we can't duck our commitment that we have made to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we say that Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasul. It's a amanat, it's a trust that you took upon yourself, and there's no way you could duck it and escape it. You just talk about, you know, those who say one thing and do something else, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala classify them as the munafiqun. And you see that they will be the deepest part of the fire. deeper than deeper than everybody else. So we have to, find the formula, because it's something that you need to find. You need to find the formula to connect and to communicate with the people, because the message of Islam has to be presented with hikmah, with wisdom. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Moses, that when you go to Pharaoh, go to him and speak to him kindly, perchance he might change. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who, who has the decision, the final decision, as to whose heart he would change or who he would not change. So he showed the most extreme personality, Pharaoh. That even if you go to him, speak to him kindly, perchance, because you don't know. So we can assume that based on somebody's history or somebody's behavior at one point in time, that the dawah, they don't qualify for dawah, they go into hell. That is not your call. And we have enough evidence for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala show us throughout history of some people. There was this man who killed 99 people, and he wanted to change his life. So he was so he met someone who was supposed to be a scholarly person. He says, "What is my state? Could I possibly get redemption from my circumstances?" The person tell him, "Boy, you killed so much people, you going to hell for sure." So he said, "Well, all right, I'm gonna make it 100 and just kill that one." And then he went to somebody else. And that person had knowledge of the book and had wisdom. And so here we're going. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all forgiving, most merciful. Allah will forgive any sin except joining partners with it. But I want to give you some advice. You see that area that you're living in there, with that company you're keeping, you'll always go back in a revolving door, back to the same life. So I am advising you, if you want to change, move from that place and go to another place, that a distant place from there. So he took his advice and he was going on his journey. But on his journey, the angel of death came and took his soul. So when the angel of death took his soul, the angel of punishment and the angel of mercy come now to contest for him. Say, well, he was an evil person, but the angel of mercy said, well, he was trying to change. So a referee came now and said, well, here we're going. Allah sent a referee and said, well, here we're going to let you measure. If he crosses the halfway mark towards righteousness, he will be among the successful ones. And if he falls short, you angel of punishment, you take it. And in reality, from a linear measurement standpoint, he was short in measurement. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in his mercy, allowed him to cross the halfway mark in order for him to be accepted into paradise. Why? Because Allah accepted his intention. So these things are for us to know that everybody, no matter what you do in the past, whatever track record you have the opportunity to change if given the opportunity to do so. You don't know. It's not your decision. They have the opportunity to change if they have been given the opportunity. So Allah is the most merciful, and as I say, we need to, tape this discussion. I know it has been taped, and play it over and over again and draw out from it what is required in terms of the way forward, to map the road forward. And we need all hands on deck, including people like yourself, who would be able to bring that wealth of knowledge and experience, on board. And if we find a common ground to work together, inshallah, by the mercy of Allah, we would in fact be doing what you have said that we should do, which I agree that we should do, is to carry the message to the people in a way that they would connect to the message, not just by hollow rhetoric and saying this and saying that. We need to find the formula to connect with the people by showing them good example and doing the things that are required for us to. So we can't duck this responsibility by no way. You can't talk it no how. As you mentioned, there's a punishment. If we don't do it and we go up against the enemies of Allah, that is one punishment. But I prefer to go up against the enemies of Allah than to go up against Allah. Because their punishment can be close to what Allah could give. So, I think that is the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and all the companions and the generations, the righteous generations that followed him. That is the way that they were successful, because they did it that way. And if we do the same thing, we will be successful in spite of what. Right? I think that I'll talk enough, and I want to give somebody else a chance to come in. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Right, assalamu alaikum. Is there any other questions that anyone would like to ask? Brother Darius?
Assalamu
Alaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, my brother.
Yeah, Brother Darius, I enjoyed the discourse. I have a question for anyhow though. You have spent, as you said, most of your intellectual time, and it is reflected in the amount of books that you have written about Islam, and also in respect to the Jamaat al-Muslimin. I want you to see if you could give me a practical answer to this particular situation. In 2024, you are referencing 1986 and forward, right? In 2024, with the influence of social media having a tremendous, well, you would have been more recent than me in terms of dealing with youths, because you would have left the university about 5 years or so. I have been alienated for over 20 years. And all my children, I have one last daughter, as you would know. But I'm talking about revitalizing the 1986 message to suit the 2024 young youths who have a lot of varying influences based on social media and other doctrine that has emerged prominently. One of your books dealt with it. I read it, the Salafi issue, and think that is also part of the influence. So I'm asking you, in terms of making that transition, could you just give us just 1 point, not 2 or 4, how we can cope with it?
Well, what I will recommend that all of us do is we listen to the young people. We start off by listening to them. We ask questions, and we sit down and shut our mouth and listen. And then we distill from that what is going on. What we must understand is that it's the power that the illicit trades and the culture of the illicit trades, the drug trade and all the other illicit trades, is having now on the ground and through the entire society, where you have now, it has reached a stage where you're not even in the game, but you have adopted a lifestyle that you feel is the lifestyle of the game. You never sit down a day in your life in the remand yard, but you're playing gangster. That is the power of it. And that is running through the society. Plenty of people feel, oh, that is an African phenomenon, a mixed race phenomenon. But you're seeing this increasingly among the Indians, because it is coming via the very culture that all of them love to imitate out of Massa. Because Massa is making money off of it. So Brother Omawali put his finger on the pulse in the same period of the 80s, right? And now it has evolved so rapidly into an entirely different stage that we have to reformulate the message to answer that. The purpose of your life. And what I have noticed over the years, persons who hold on to this culture are very intensely driven by desire, because everything is what they want and what they are not willing to do in order to get it. So they have a whole wish list of what they want and what they must have, and they must have it now. So they have nothing about education and go to school and do this and thing and then get a job and then. You want it now by any means necessary. So it has to be reformulated. But the fact of the matter is, what has to be brought back is the potency of that dawah. Because the dawah was so potent for that time. So we have to recreate the potency for this time. Because remember, the rivers of blood that are flowing through this country is already showing to us the futility of it all. Because you're ending up dead and your mother don't even have the money to bury you. So that is the reality. So we go to the source and listen to them.
Alhamdulillah. Is there anyone else that may have a question to the host, inshallah? Brother Saif, I see your mic is on. You have another question?
Yeah, I have a semi-personal, but I think Darius, I know your mother was very active in TML. At what stage she started to practice Islam?
My mother embraced Islam in the closing years of her life. She had crisis in her personal life and she went to Islam. And since TML was just up the road, she went to TML. And she eventually joined TML and she ended up being on one term member of TML executive and everything else. And that is where she would tell me all the couture in TML. But she died a Muslim.
Alhamdulillah. Oh, thanks. I just wanted to rectify that. So yeah, it was to make it public, though, but it was on the mind.
No problem. She was also a firm supporter of the Jamaat al-Muslimeen. She was a Muslim who never once said that 1990 was done by evil people. She insisted that 1990 was an act of self-defense. Well, you know that didn't make her very popular, right? Because the rest of them spoke with pure hate.
That in itself is a separate piece of history that hopefully, inshallah, we would get to dive into. So, seeing that we have no more questions for our guest speaker to this evening. Imam Sadiq, I would like you to close us with a closing dua. But before we close, this wraps up our online series for this year. And on Emancipation Night, we have our dinner and lecture. Brother Darius, inshallah, I hope to see you there.
Yes, my brother.
Allah's willing, I hope to
God's
see you there.
willing.
And our speaker would be Brother Mtima Salawazi. He's the CEO of the Roots Foundation. Not sure if you're aware of him.
No, my brother.
All right, so outside of that, I want to thank all the participants for the days that we did have the lectures. I appreciate the feedback from everyone. I look forward to the feedback for this lecture also. And also I look forward to sharing next year, inshallah, because this series will continue on, and look forward to seeing you all there. So Imam Sadiq, inshallah, could you do us the honors of closing this session with a dua?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. Ya Allah, all praise and thanks belong to you. We praise your name. Ya Allah, we thank you for giving us the opportunity to shed some light where there is darkness. Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unite our hearts so as we go forward in our duty in your service. Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unite our hearts so that we could find common ground and to support each other in what is right. Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you guide us, there is none to misguide us, and if you leave us without guidance, there is none to guide us. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, salamun alal mursalin, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Amin.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, Inba and all the others who made this possible. Did a great start and made proceed even further and better next year.
Amen. Inshallah.
Inshallah.
It was an interesting presentation. I enjoyed it. Shukran.